And we're back live. Welcome to the Flagrant 2 podcast. I am your host, Kyle Flieger. I am not being joined by anyone today. I'm going to be doing this podcast solo, just to give you all an idea of what's going on. We are having some technical difficulties. Podcasts, as it turns out, can be extremely difficult to make. I actually just listened to a podcast last night by Nate Duncan, and I listen to his podcast all the time, and he actually lamented at the beginning of his podcast just how difficult it is to connect through Skype or Google Hangouts. Those are the technologies that are currently available. So those of you who are remaining patient and sticking it out with us, I still hope the content is worth your time today. I have a feeling it will be, but just wanted to be transparent about what exactly is going on. We fully intend to have this worked out by Thursday when we go live for the general NBA podcast, where me and Noah, possibly Cody Fincher, will be on, and we'll be discussing what's just going on through the NBA, Team USA, and some stuff like that. But today, Tuesday, is my favorite day. It's Suns Day, and the Suns actually have a lot of news to talk about. Since the podcast on Tuesday, Cody and I were able to go to the press conference where the Suns announced Leandro Barbosa, and we were lucky enough to interview him. And then I was lucky enough to spend a little bit of time one-on-one with Earl Watson and got some time with Suns GM Ryan McDonough as well. So we'll go through some of the information that they gave about what the Suns are looking to do, and hopefully we can generate some good discussion on the website, valleyofthesuns.com. We're going to post this podcast link there and embed it into one of the posts, and hopefully we can get some good discussion surrounding some of these topics. So first and foremost, like I said, I'm Kyle Flieger. I'm a writer for valleyofthesuns.com, and the first topic today is the Suns going to Mexico. So the Phoenix Suns, in concert with the NBA, announced last week that the Suns will be playing two of their home games from Mexico City, Mexico. The games will be, I believe, January 12th and 14th, so they'll be consecutive home games, and they will be playing the San Antonio Spurs and Dallas Mavericks. Now, initially, it just makes sense. The Suns, the Spurs, and the Mavericks all have really large Latin populations, Mexican populations in their cities. They're teams that have embraced their Hispanic fans and have Hispanic nights where they wear the Los Suns, Los Spurs, all those different types of jerseys. And this is just an extension of that. The Suns reaching out, building their brand, showing the fans locally that they're proud of the culture and heritage that a lot of the Suns fans brings to the table. And, they're going to go to Mexico and explore that a little more. The implications of playing two home games in another city would normally be a concern. If the Suns were a team that was going to be contending for a championship or even playoff contention, the Suns would have a reason to be concerned. They'd be giving up two home games. Functionally, every game counts when you're in a playoff race. Home court advantage can be determined by a game. We saw that play a pivotal role in some of the series with the Clippers and the Spurs. So positioning can mean a lot in the NBA, and I would be surprised if other teams were willing to do this, but the Suns really just don't have as much to lose. The Suns know that their timeline is a few years away. They don't mind if they're bad. In the Suns scenario, they hope that their draft picks continue to yield the best possible product, and they intend to use those draft picks and hope they're as high as possible. So one of the ways that happens is if the Suns lose games. The Suns are going to lose more games if they're playing away from home more often. That being said, it's sort of an involuntary way to tank. The Suns are going to be potentially one of the worst records in the Western Conference. Forfeiting two games doesn't really hurt them. If anything, it's a way to lose a couple of games without it being obvious that the Suns are tanking. Now, as far as the international ramifications, I think that's probably the larger question, since the Suns really don't have much to lose in terms of their positioning playing in home games in another city. But the international side of what's going on is going to be relevant down the road in the NBA. I mean, this is just a sign of things to come. The NBA is looking to expand into international markets even more than they already are. The game is extremely popular in Eastern Europe. It's extremely popular throughout most of Europe. Asia, China, Japan are all putting together up-and-coming basketball programs. And this is an opportunity for the NBA and the Suns to build their brand internationally. And I wouldn't be surprised if over the next 2-3 years you see the NBA putting teams in London, putting them possibly in Spain, possibly in France. It just makes sense. We've seen it with the NFL. The more money they can make, they're going to try it. We're going to see jersey ad sales this year where teams will be able to sell space on the front of the jersey, very similar to the way international soccer works. So you can see the game trending towards some of these international tendencies. I'm excited. I think that it's really cool. I think that it would be really neat for the fans of Spain, for example, to get a chance to see Pau Gasol play against Marc Gasol in a Grizzlies versus Spurs matchup live from Spain. I think that would do extremely well, both in terms of the attendance in Spain and also the attention it would draw from fans in the United States still as well. So this trend toward international play is something that is going to become the norm. The Suns are just the guinea pig. The Suns are the first step, and it's always good to be the pioneer. Anytime you're doing something first, it allows the Suns to take advantage of the branding. It allows the Suns to build on the fan base they already have and build on the culture that they're trying to work on. So as far as the Suns moving games to Mexico, Suns president Jason Rowley talked in great detail what he thought the implications of expanding the Suns brand would be, and I couldn't agree with him more. It's just going to make more fans endeared to the Suns. It's going to put a focus and attention in a positive way on the large Hispanic fan base and help to continue to cultivate that fan base. And as a Suns fan, we'll take every fan we can get. This is a franchise that needs all the karma, all the luck, anything that can be brought our way in terms of positive vibes. The Suns need it. So hopefully we'll score some NBA karma points from the basketball gods by going to Mexico and showing off what the Suns can do. I think it's great anytime you can beat two of your rivals, the Spurs and Mavericks, in front of a bunch of other people. I relish the opportunity to watch the Suns go ahead and just, if they can, beat the Spurs in front of a crowd in Mexico. And, they do have a large fan base, so maybe there can be some rivalry between, the people in Mexico, the people in Dallas, the people in San Antonio, and here in Phoenix. Maybe there can be some pride for who is the most popular or powerful Spanish fan base. So, that's the first thing on the list. The second thing was I got an opportunity to talk to Suns GM Ryan McDonough. It was myself, Paul Coro, and one other reporter. And, I asked Ryan McDonough about the cap space that the Suns have available to them. Currently, the Suns have approximately $13 million in cap space, according to McDonough himself. I think there's ways they can get that up even higher, but it doesn't seem like they're going to do anything to accomplish that. The $13 million doesn't put the Suns above the salary floor. So just to explain, in the NBA, there's a salary floor. Teams need to spend 90% of whatever the salary cap is. So the salary cap this year is $107 million. So the salary floor is 90% of that. Teams that don't spend 90% of $107 million have to pay whatever that difference is to their current roster. So it's not really a penalty. Ryan McDonough made that very clear. He doesn't think that it's as big of a deal as a lot of teams make it out to be. Most teams will work to hit the salary floor because, as McDonough put it, if you've got the money, you might as well spend it. But the Suns don't seem to feel any of that pressure from the salary floor. Sounded like they'd be perfectly fine just not meeting the salary floor, preserving the salary cap space that they have going into the 2017 free agency and offseason, which is set to be a very rich free agent class. Another thing McDonough himself pointed out was that the 2017 class is projected to be a lot stronger, and as a result, he doesn't want to tie up the Suns' money in contracts that are going to make them inflexible in that market. So it makes sense. A lot of Suns fans that I've talked to don't want the Suns to do anything at all. Additionally, with the money, they floated the idea of signing a Mo Harkless, Dion Waiters until he was just signed by the Heat. Just some different players that may have some upside or unrealized potential that the Suns may take a flyer on to see what they have. It does not sound like the Suns are interested in doing that at all. And that's probably a good thing. By being $13 million under the floor or under the cap, the Suns have put themselves in a position to where not only do they have flexibility moving forward, but they have a pretty full roster. The Suns already had 13 players active on the roster. They may end up signing Allen Williams, and I think they may have partially guaranteed his contract and signed him. So we may see Allen Williams on the roster next year as well, and it looks like we will. But other than that, the Suns are interested in 2017. They understand that their future is bright, and there's no real reason to push to be mediocre in the present. And that's the key. If the Suns are going to try and extend their timeline 2 to 3 years and invest in players like Devin Booker, Dragan Bender, and Marquise Chris, who are all teenagers, they need to have patience and not jam up their cap space moving forward. So one of the things that Ryan McDonough said the Suns may do in regard to the salary floor is something that Portland executed on last year. So Portland last year, coming up to the trade deadline, was slightly under the salary floor, and they knew that. So they wanted to get above the salary floor so that they didn't have to pay the, quote-unquote penalty. It's not really a penalty, but didn't have to distribute the rest of that money amongst all the players. They'd rather try to get an asset for it, which is smart. Now, the trade that Ryan McDonough pointed to was the Anderson Varejao trade. At the trade deadline last year, the Cavs were trying to clear cap space so that they could bring in other players. They wanted to try and make their championship run, which ended up working, and they knew that they needed to get rid of Anderson Varejao's large expiring contract. So, because the contract was up at the end of the year, the Portland Trailblazers made a trade that allowed them to get rid of Varejao, and they took on Varejao's contract, putting them over the salary floor. But because the contract is prorated, they didn't have to pay Varejao's full contract. They only paid for what they owe him the rest of the season. So it's a way to both get a discount on the player for the rest of the year, determine whether they're going to be a fit in your system, or just to eat some salary cap space and get above the salary floor and hopefully take in an asset. Now, the Trailblazers were able to get a first-round pick from the Cavs to take Anderson Varejao. And that was the same point of comparison that McDonough was using when we were talking. It sounded like that's going to be the price he's looking for, and he wants to continue to acquire as many first-round picks as possible. Now, I discussed this with ESPN insider Kevin Pelton, and Kevin basically told me he doesn't see that trade being as likely because the salary cap went up so much that teams are going to have less desperation or less of a need to move a big contract. However, there's still going to be expiring contracts. There are still going to be teams that find themselves in contention and are looking to make a move, and they're going to need to offload either salary so that they can sign a player or trade for a player, or they're going to just be looking to clear up cap space to avoid the luxury tax. Because if you repeat as a luxury taxpayer, the repeater tax is astronomical. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you can pay tens of millions of dollars if you're a repeater over the tax, and that's one of the reasons that teams may have incentive to try and get rid of some of the contracts that they have that are going to keep them over the salary tax, and it's going to put them in a position where there may be teams that are desperate, but that's what the Suns are looking out for. Even if Kevin Pelton's right, the Suns don't end up finding a way to use that trade. Seems like the Suns GM and front office have no problem just extending no additional contracts. They won't make a trade in that scenario. They'll take on the penalty of having to pay out the extra money to their players, and they'll move into the 2017 free agency with a lot more cap space. Now, why is it important for the Suns to keep the cap space if their timeline's so far extended? It's because Ryan McDonough knows that in order to be a championship caliber team in this league, you have to have top tier talent. You have to have superstars on your team. The emergence of Devin Booker, who looked amazing in Summer League, who is playing for the Team USA select team and playing against some of the top competition, being coached by Greg Popovich right now. He has proven himself to be a potential superstar, but it doesn't just take one. We see these super teams where Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson are all on one team. You've got Draymond Green on that team. You've got Andre Iguodala on that team. So if you're going to in 4 years try to take down that team, 4 years more mature, 4 years more invested, with 4 years more chemistry. You need superstars to try and do that. And the Suns plan on making big pitches to big-name free agents in the 2017 free agency. That's going to happen. Ryan McDonough made it very clear that the Suns were proud of the fact that they were involved in the LeBron talks, that they were one of the 3 teams LeBron chose to meet with. They are proud of the fact that they were one of the final 2 teams involved with the LaMarcus Aldridge free agency. The Suns have been close, but have been unable to secure top free agents. This is not something that's new. I mean, the 2 most prominent free agents in Suns history are probably Tom Chambers and Steve Nash. Both of those signings were great, but the Suns really haven't had a big free agent signing in almost 15 years. And as a result, just getting their foot in the door with these big name free agents and showing that they do have a young core with a lot of space in the under the salary cap can be alluring to some of these players. And whatever the Suns front office has been doing to try to at least get the attention of the top free agents, it seems to be working. The question is will McDonough be able to seal the deal? Will he actually be able to get one of these people, one of these free agents, to come into Phoenix? Now, the free agent class in 2017 is extremely deep, but so is the draft class projected in 2017. So it seems like the Suns are being very clever in the way that they're trying to go through this season. They're building optimism. Dan Bickley here locally was talking about how the Suns are stoking the fires of optimism and how the Suns are trying to get people to believe. That's a positive culture thing, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. I don't think the Suns are trying to set the expectation for fans that they're going to be a playoff team. That's not the sense of anything I get when I talk to the front office. It's not the sense I get when I talk to the coaching staff. The sense is they're focused on building a program, on building a system that they can utilize to create championship caliber teams down the road. Right now, that's based on youth and cap flexibility. There may not be a team that has more flexibility moving forward than the Suns. They have 2 draft picks from the Heat that are first-round picks with limited protection. They have their own first-round picks. They have a ton of young talent that may not even see the floor in Archie Goodwin, and Tyler Ulis is going to have to push to get minutes. The Suns have TJ Warren, who's somebody that is going to have to show a lot from him in terms of extending his range to the 3-point line and defending at a higher level. The whole Suns team needs to defend at a higher level. Last year, the Suns had some of the worst defenders on the wings in the NBA. And when I say some of the worst, I mean look up any statistic about individual defense, and you're going to see the bottom of the list has at least 1 or 2 Suns names if we're talking about the small forward or shooting guard position. And Devin Booker didn't get 1 steal in Summer League. So the Suns are going to have to work on their defensive side of the ball. They may be looking to get players who specialize in defense. I could see the Suns potentially trying to, in free agency, get a rim protector to pair with Alex Len long term because Tyson Chandler won't be under contract when their timeline for success is. Try to get somebody at the small forward, power forward position to replace the Jared Dudleys and PJ Tuckers who are good wing defenders, because right now that just doesn't exist. So the Suns need this flexibility moving forward in order to address the areas of need that they have. Now, the strategy of keeping the flexibility moving forward is something that it's very clear Ryan McDonough is going to do. He made no bones about it when talking about, what he expects. He didn't think they were really going to invite anyone else to camp. He talked about how specifically he thinks that the Suns will be able to get close to max, if not, as of right now, they'll have close to max space in the 2017 year, but it would take a couple of easy moves to get full max space to offer to one of the big name free agents. And when you talk about pairing one of the top free agents with the young core, it gets people in Phoenix really excited. And I think that's where the optimism comes from. I think that the Suns know the direction they want to go. It seems like the vision is clear. It seems like the talent is young but existent. And there's a lot of reasons to be excited. Now, that optimism should not extend to the playoffs. I don't see the Suns making the playoffs this year. If anything, I see the Suns playing their teens a lot of minutes. I see Bender playing a lot of minutes. I see Marquise Chris playing a lot of minutes. I see them trying to use Tyler Ulis and see if he can make it despite his size. I think the Suns are going to play Alex Len a lot of minutes just to see what they have in these young guys, because in the event it's not going well, worst case scenario, you lose a bunch of games and your draft picks are going to be much higher than they would be if your team ends up being good. If the team ends up being good, it's because your young talent has performed and outperformed their expectations. They've outperformed the reasonable goals that we've set forward for them. I think a reasonable goal for the Suns would be to win 30 games. I think that that's a realistic possibility. I think that if the Suns win more than 30 games, that's overachieving. I wouldn't mind if the Suns only won 20 games. I wouldn't mind if the Suns traded Brandon Knight, which it does not sound like they're going to do, and we'll talk about that in the interview with Earl Watson. But if the Suns end up not using Brandon Knight, limiting Eric Bledsoe's minutes because he's coming off an injury, and using him coming off an injury as a way to try to limit his minutes and keep him fresh for next year and the year after that, that's not a terrible idea. But if you are playing Eric Bledsoe, if you're playing Brandon Knight, the team is going to be too good to be a bottom 5 team in the NBA. Eric Bledsoe is a seriously talented player. Brandon Knight has still a very diverse offensive game. He can still shoot the ball at 40% from 3. He can still generate his own offense on a second unit. He still can be that Jamal Crawford 2.0. So if the Suns really are interested in racing to the bottom again for a second season and trying to get a couple of really high draft picks again, look for them to be playing their young players and Ulis and the Barbosas more than they're playing Bledsoe and Brandon Knight. Now, obviously, Bledsoe's going to start, but I think that's a way, as a Suns fan, you can track what exactly they're trying to accomplish. Are they playing Tyler Ulis 25 minutes instead of playing Brandon Knight? Is that something that is proving to be successful? If they're losing games and it doesn't look like they mind, it's probably because they don't mind. And that shouldn't cut into the optimism that Bickley talks about. That shouldn't cut into the optimism Suns fans have. As long as it's a realistic optimism, we shouldn't really have a problem. Now, what does the Suns team look like? Who's developing them? I got a very fortunate opportunity. After the Leandro Barbosa press conference, the Suns basically opened up the GM Ryan McDonough and new coach Earl Watson to questions. No one else wanted to talk to Earl Watson at the time, so I jumped on the opportunity to do a one-on-one interview with them and got to spend about 15 minutes with the coach. And I posted an article on Valley of the Suns about him with some of my favorite parts of the interview, and you can listen to the full interview as well. But Earl Watson is a different guy. He is extremely unique. He refers to himself as unique. He's unorthodox. He's one of these people that I feel like sounds like how Phil Jackson sounds when he talks about basketball. It's about culture. It's about family. It's about brotherhood. It's about trust. And I've been fascinated by Earl Watson since I saw his interviews in the Summer League. He talked about wanting to build a family. He talked about the Krebs cycle, which is a really cool reference that I had to ask one of my botanist friends about. The Krebs cycle is essentially the process that creates energy, and Earl Watson uses it as a metaphor for the program he's trying to create in Phoenix. He talks about how he doesn't want it to just be in the front office or in the locker room, that he expects the security guards, the concession workers, the ticket office, the front office, and the coaching staff all to be excited, all to have the same level of joy that comes out of their work, the same level of family that they feel. And it's exciting to hear a player talk about that, because it really seems, or a coach to talk about that, because it really seems to resonate with the players. And one thing that has been attributed as a quality to Earl Watson since he was named the interim coach last year is the label of players coach. He's one of these guys that the players connect with. And he's only 37 years old. He's a young guy. And he knows that. the Suns are just young in general. The Suns GM is 36. The Suns head coach is 37. And they're coaching a bunch of teenagers and younger guys in their early 20s. So the youth movement extends everywhere, and that's something that Earl Watson is using to his advantage. He reads a lot. You can tell that he reads motivational writing. He reads Dr. Hawkins was one of his favorite authors. It's a local author who writes a lot about self-motivation and the different ways to attack and be successful at life. And one of the distinctions that he made was force versus power. Force means that you're fighting. Anytime you're forcing, there's going to be retaliation, usually negative, whereas with power, you're going to power your way through. So he doesn't use the word fight. He wouldn't say fight through the screen. He'd say power your way through the screen. And he says that the language is unique, but what makes it impactful is that you can tell he believes what he's saying. He must have tapped me on the shoulder excitedly just in conversation to emphasize a point. And I wasn't looking away. I was staring right at his face, but he would keep tapping me on the shoulder while talking to me and, engage me even with his hands just to try and show off how excited he was about what he was talking about. He talked about how physically, as someone who loves to teach, he's going to go the extra mile to not just tell you to get through the screen, not just yell at you to fight through the screen. He's going to empower you to learn how to get through a screen. He's going to show you the technique. He's going to show you, and he physically showed me, on me, of how to sweep the hand down, of how to get leverage and get low and pop back up through the screen to be in a position to actively continue to defend. And that shows me that he's not just trying to coach the minds of the players, but he physically wants to show them the technique. And that's something that's going to prove beneficial, I believe, because of what Earl Watson said. He talked about how today players just don't go to college as long. You can look at Dragon Bender, who never went to college. You can look at Marquise Chris, who went for 1 year. Tyler Ulis went for 2 years. Devin Booker went for 1 year. Alex Len went for 1 year. So these guys are all still very young, and they never really had the same family college experience that Earl Watson had. I mean, he played for 4 years at UCLA. He started all 4 years in the backcourt that included Baron Davis and some other really great point guards and shooting guards. He knows what it's like to be in an environment that considers itself a program, a system that can continue to replicate itself, that if you put the right energy in, or if you put the right pieces in, you're going to create the positive energy and the outcomes you're looking for. Now, this is not very X's and O's, but it strikes me as relevant because as somebody who's coached in my lifetime, it's true. If you can get somebody engaged, if you can make somebody feel powerful and make them feel empowered to fight through, or as Earl Watson wouldn't like me saying fight, to power their way through whatever struggles and adversity they're going to have, they're going to be a more successful player. And there's a lot more physical teaching that needs to happen here in Phoenix and in general in the NBA because the players are getting younger and younger and have less and less experience learning technique. If you want to see a perfect example of that, just look at Marquise Chris, who has essentially one move. He's got one sort of unrefined raw spin move where his just athleticism and quickness allows him to get a first step, make an aggressive move to the basket, and either draw a foul or dunk on somebody. And how he accesses that move, making that move consistent, giving him multiple options out of the same set where he can, instead of just having to pull the same spin move, he can pump fake and drive. He can pull up. He can jab step and pull up. He can wait for the pick to come around and then try to engage. He just will develop more tools, more weapons in his arsenal, and it takes somebody who's going to be patient with the players to accomplish that. And that's something I talked to Earl Watson about, is where he derives his patience, because when you're coaching young players, they're going to make mistakes. And he talked about how in his background, in his lifetime, his dad was one of the people who integrated the Army. His dad joined the Army in 1949. He helped integrate the Army in the mid-50s. He was a black drill sergeant and a tank sergeant, and somebody who really pushed leadership into Earl Watson at a young age. There's a great quote about Watson just talking about admiring his dad's uniform hanging in his closet and admiring the American flag hanging on the wall. And he felt like he never had a choice as to whether or not he was going to be a leader. It was just something that was in him, that he was meant to be. And it's neat to see him start off on that journey. Whether he makes it in Phoenix is going to be a whole nother issue. We know that sometimes coaches don't necessarily get the full length of time to develop players and see the results of their own coaching. Mark Jackson is somebody who was considered a player's coach, who talks a lot about philosophy in the way he approaches the game. And he obviously got a lot out of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and helped develop them into the players they are. But he wasn't considered to have the X's and O's expertise. He wasn't considered to have the offensive or defensive system necessary to take that team to a championship level. And even though they won 50 games under Mike Jackson, the Warriors moved on, and it now looks to have been a really smart move. Steve Kerr seems to have been the right guy for the job. And so it's interesting to see Earl Watson focus on the development and the mental side of it and the philosophy behind what they're trying to build, emphasizing culture, because that's what you hear great coaches talk about. That's what Phil Jackson always talked about. That's what Greg Popovich today talks about all the time. Whenever he's talking about his players, he's talking about the family, he's talking about the system, he's talking about, believing in and buying into what they're trying to do. And Earl Watson has those same mentalities. He's speaking the same way about what he wants to accomplish here in Phoenix, and that's really encouraging. The question is will he have enough immediate success? Will he show that his system is working in time for him to play out his entire contract, for the Suns to get good on his watch, and to allow him to coach them, hopefully once they've made that transition into a playoff team and hopefully a contending team if they continue to build in that direction. So with Earl Watson, I think it's going to be crucial to see how the players continue to respond. One of the things I asked him, which was a question that we actually got after the podcast that we did before, was how, if he's so focused on chemistry and family, do you keep that family mentality when there's trades being talked about, when there's trade rumors coming around? And, he specifically mentioned Brandon Knight. He said that not only is Brandon Knight one of the most important pieces of the team because of how him and Bledsoe and Booker are all sacrificing to make the team better and to make the team more successful, he also said that the rumors are unfounded, that the unfounded rumors are dangerous, that he does not like them. He was not shy about that. He thinks that they are not helpful. They make his job more difficult. But he knows that because they're not started internally, that the players don't have anything to worry about. And he hopes that he's communicating his message well enough through his players that you are a part of this. No matter what happens in your career, we're going to have a lifelong relationship. And that's one of the other great quotes is he said, we're not here to build contractual relationships. We're here to build lifelong relationships. And so even if the players through the course of their professional lives end up leaving Phoenix, hopefully he's made an impression on them. He says that his idea of the ideal ending is 20 years from now having a press conference where in Phoenix that he's invited to, and having one of the young players on the team or a player that he previously coached get up and help him across the floor, help him up to the podium, or help him into his chair. Just having a personal connection with his players seems to mean a lot. As a result, he believes that he can build a family mentality even with trade rumors swirling about Brandon Knight or Tyson Chandler. He says the rumors are unfounded, that they're not trading Brandon Knight, that if the rumors are coming from internally, they need to stop because they're false, but that it's natural for, especially with young teams, for other teams to look at them and ask about the availability of some of the players that may seem to be redundant. And the Suns do have a redundancy at the guard position. So it's not unrealistic or unwarranted to ask, are you going to be looking to trade Brandon Knight or Eric Bledsoe like they've been rumored to be doing? The one thing that seems to be crucial to Earl Watson is he wants to create what he calls the program, and he keeps referring it to the program, as if it were a college. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if NBA players are willing to go back to a college mentality. I think a lot of the players deliberately left college on purpose because they didn't think college had to offer them what the pros does. So we'll have to see exactly how that all plays out. But one thing that is very obvious with Earl Watson is that he will do everything in his power to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. He will continue to be a motivator. He will involve himself in practice physically. He will work out with the players, which he talks about requiring him to do a lot more yoga now and a lot more stretching to try to stay in shape to hang with these guys as he gets a little bit older. He's still young, but he's not as young as, he's almost twice as old as Dragon Bender. So it's something that he has to make sure that he is taking care of his body and he's keeping himself in the position to where he can actually do some of this stuff. But it's exciting to see somebody so happy with what they're going to be doing. And hey, if Earl Watson works out, the Suns are paying him like $2.5 million a year. He's one of the lowest paid coaches in the NBA. They are clearly trying to leverage inexperience and youth and the very small contracts that come with it and show that their system, their program is what will yield results. And they're in a position to where they're not spending very much on their coaching staff. They're not spending very much on their roster, but it seems like there's a lot of upside, whether it's with Earl Watson, whether it's with the players that are there. The Suns are going to be fun. The Suns are going to be interesting to watch. And I'll definitely be asking Earl Watson a lot more questions. I emailed him a couple of follow-up questions I had for the article just because I want to get more involved with how exactly he plans on implementing the culture that he's trying to impose in Phoenix and just talk to him about exactly how he plans to use the roster he has in front of him, where he plans on running certain types of smaller lineups, how he plans on using the 5 different guards that he has. Will he run 2 and 3 guard lineups? Is that something he's considering? So I don't really have a lot of answers to the X's and O's of Earl Watson. I know that they're interested in pushing the pace. They plan on extending the floor and creating space through three-point shooting. There's going to be a focus on improved shooting in Phoenix. They're going to take a lot of threes. Dragon Bender, despite not making a lot of threes, took a lot of threes in Summer League. So their intention is to run, is to space the floor, and to try and use the shooting and the guard play that they have to penetrate and kick to shooters or to draw fouls and get to the rim. But I don't know exactly what the defensive strategy is going to be, whether they're going to have to continue to hide Devin Booker or TJ Warren or Brandon Knight on the defensive side of the ball, because the only real solid active defenders that they had last year and that they're likely to have this year, Eric Bledsoe, Tyson Chandler, PJ Tucker, and Jared Dudley. And Dudley and Tucker are redundant and probably not going to share the floor. So we don't know as much as we'd like to about exactly what system on the floor Earl Watson will be implementing, but it was really neat to get an insight into the system that they'll be using off the floor and just exactly what his style of coaching is. I see him as one of these Zen Master, Phil Jackson types who's going to really try to connect and bond with his players. It's as important to him that they become good people as great players. You know, when he was talking about his excitement for what Suns fans are going to see, he's, Devin Booker's growing up. Eric Bledsoe has turned into somebody really good in front of the camera and has transcended into a really great father. You know, to hear him talk about Suns fans being proud of Eric Bledsoe being a father doesn't strike you as what sports fans are usually focused on, but it's optimistic. It might be a little too idealistic, but it's okay to be a little idealistic when you have such a young team. You want to try to build a winning mentality and a winning culture moving forward, and hopefully Suns players will show off that not only is there a chemistry off the court and in the community, but there's a chemistry on the court as well. And if the Suns can show off young talent, a young coach with who's fun to play for, who cares about his players, They could be attractive to free agents coming into the 2017 free agency. They could be attractive to players who they may trade for. So I think the Suns have a very interesting year ahead of them. Optimism is not misplaced. It just needs to be tempered optimism. It needs to be realistic optimism. And then the Suns don't have anything to worry about. So, basically, we know the Suns are going to have 2 home games in Mexico. They're trying to build the brand within their community. The Suns probably won't spend any more money in free agency. Their roster's pretty set, which could mean that they might decide to race to the bottom again and help their assets in the draft be even more valuable. Or they may look to acquire a expiring contract and charge a team a first-round pick to trade the contract, or maybe some valuable second-round picks. Who knows? The point is the Suns are trying to create a positive future, and the way they're going about that in the present is really unique. And it's really an exciting time to be a Suns fan. If you are somebody who is anti-Zen, if you think that the mumbo-jumbo of Earl Watson is not going to pay off, then you might not be as optimistic. But if you ever get a chance to hear Earl Watson speak, it's really hard not to buy into what he's selling. It's really hard not to believe the hype. He's just so excited, so passionate, and that makes me, as somebody who covers the Suns, more excited and passionate. It makes me excited as a NBA fan to know that the young crop of talent, both in the Suns locker room and in the coaching staff, is going to be something that pushes the Suns toward the championship vision that they have. And who knows how far away that vision is? Who knows how long it's going to take before the Suns are in contention? But it feels like they're building the foundation. It feels like they've got a direction, that they're creating an identity, and that identity is something they're going to be proud of, and that other people may notice and want to be a part of. So we will be back with you on Thursday. Hopefully it will be more than just me going through the Suns news. We'll get this podcast thing worked out. We appreciate your patience here at the Flagrant 2 podcast. If you have any questions, please, we are going to post this on valleyofthesuns.com. You can check out the podcast there, comment, argue with me. That's the whole point. I love to hear from Suns fans about what they think. I love the questions that we get asked and that were recommended to ask. We actually physically used Facebook Live. I used it, my name Kyle Flieger, to live stream the press conference with Leandro Barbosa, and as people were typing questions in the live feed, I was asking those questions live. So we're going to try to do a bunch of cool, fun, interactive things that help engage the Suns fans and get your questions answered, make you feel more involved in the process. So join me at valleyofthesuns.com to let me know what questions you have, or you can look us up on Twitter at Flagrant Pod. I am at Suns Debate. So the podcast has its own Twitter at Flagrant Pod, and I have my Twitter at Suns Debate. Argue with me there. I'm always up for a good discussion about the NBA in general, or the Phoenix Suns specifically. And we will be back with you Thursday this week to do a full NBA pod. All right. Thanks, everybody.